Welcome to the NdB Sunday Show. With me, Steyn, and iconic whistleblower, Cynthia Stimple. Welcome, Cynthia. It's wonderful to be talking to you again.
Good day, Chris. And so great to meet up again and have a chat. So thank you for inviting me to your show today.
You are welcome. You are now the director of Courage Hub SA, a new group to support whistleblowers. But I'd like to take you back to your time at South African Airways, where as group treasurer, you took the drastic step to blow the whistle and suffered greatly for it. Please remind our viewers of your own personal experience as a whistleblower.
Thank you, Chris. So looking back, it's actually 10 years. Can you believe it? This happened in 2016, and now we're sitting in 2026. So when all this transpired was towards the end of 2015, but when I actually blew the whistle was in 2016. Around March, I was already looking at the issues that I was being faced with. Since December, I was asked in December 2015, I was asked to ratify a board resolution, which I refused. In January of 2026, I was then asked to bring on suppliers for as new suppliers instead of the banks to source funding for SA, which I refused. And then I was also asked to approve a transaction advisor to source funding for SA, which I refused. And so that obviously led up to where I had to blow the whistle, because I realized that our board was interfering operationally with our organization, and the work that I was doing with my team in our treasury department. And secondly was that they were making demands on what we were supposed to do and transgressing all our procedures and policies which we have internally that are normally approved through the board anyway. And so when I did speak out, my first methodology was to just directly push back with the acting CFO at the time and say, we're not doing this. This is going against our policies and procedures. Let's go out and do a full request for proposal for funding, which at the time she refused. Instead, they wanted us to go directly with a Free State Development Corporate. And then they got a transaction advisor, which they wanted us to utilize the transaction advisor. And then the last thing was I was actually called into a meeting in May to sign a bid adjudication committee proposal to use BNP Capital as this client who was never in funding, to sign them and approve them to source funding for SA. And again, they are refused. And so then I reported it to the National Treasury. And when I got no word from National Treasury, I'd also reported it before going to National Treasury to our executive managers, and there was nothing. And to stop it, and to internally to our chief head of risk and our chief head of audit, I then went to Outer, and that's where I reported it. And with Outer's help, we were able to stop the transaction and save SA 256 million that would have been paid out and not been able to recoup today, whereas we prevented this from happening. So in reflecting back now 10 years, I'm happy that I did it and was able to stop money being paid out to a small, not unknown advisor that would not have done anything for SA, but rather just taken the funds.
But you paid a heavy price personally.
Indeed. And that's the price, unfortunately, as a whistleblower or a person who speaks the truth or a person who stands up against senior management in doing the wrong thing. They suffer the ultimate, as in you lose your jobs, you lose your livelihood, your reputation gets damaged, you're blacklisted, you incur unnecessary legal fees. On top of that, because you have no job, you're unable to pay your home loans or your car loans. And so many of our whistleblowers suffer the same fate. Obviously, there are some of us who suffer the ultimate fate, like Babita Deokaran, like Money, the lady recently, Martha Money Ransofe, like Mfo Mafelo, like Eric Mapenya, all those who have stood up and spoken out against corruption have lost their lives.
How will Courage Hub SA support whistleblowers now?
So we looked at the gaps before we started setting up Courage Hub. We know that there are organizations like Alta doing wonderful work in the corruption space where they are speaking to whistleblowers and getting the information and supporting whistleblowers in some way. I know Outer paid my legal fees, and at the moment, many of the whistleblowers are getting supported legally through two other organizations called PLAF, which is a platform to support whistleblowers in Africa. And they provide the legal support together with counseling and some financial assistance. And then there's the organization called the Whistleblower House, which I've worked for 3 years, who also provide the support as in legal fees, counseling fees, um, a financial stipend, a small amount to assist whistleblowers, and security when they need it. And so before I started Courage Hub, I was looking at what are we lacking and where are the gaps in helping whistleblowers. And part is giving whistleblowers their voice because many wait for their cases and the cases are postponed for years before they have a chance to actually speak and tell their own story. So what Courage Hub offers is for whistleblowers to tell their stories via podcasts. So we will listen to them and we will help them tell their stories through our podcasts, which they will then be made publicly for those who want it made publicly. And for those who feel I need to tell my story, but I don't want it in the public space for risk purposes, putting their own family lives at risk, but they would like it for their family to know the story, especially grandchildren or, they may pass on, but then there's the story which was left untold and they could tell their story then through this podcast. So that's part of it. In my own experience as a whistleblower, I found that the more I spoke about my story, the more I healed. So it was a healing mechanism. And that's what I want to offer for whistleblowers. And those that have spoken out in public spaces or told their stories many times have found that it has healed them, that they don't feel the pain and the trauma as much anymore as in those early days of telling the stories. So that's one of the areas we're going to offer to whistleblowers. The other is a platform to exhibit stories. So behind me, you may see pictures that we have of deceased whistleblowers. So those who don't have a voice anymore, it's how can we still keep these stories alive? And we will invite their families to come and share their own experience here, which they can do through podcast about what happened when their parent or friend or mother or sister was killed through standing up for the truth or standing up for courage is why the Courage Hub has come out. So that's what we're going to do is exhibit these stories. We have done in our launch, which we had on the 27th of April, we've depicted stories of deceased whistleblowers, but we've also exhibited stories of those that are alive. And we will keep on doing that as we go along and every month come up with a new story and exhibit that story and then post it on social media. And then the third part of our focus would be is training the youth. Reason being, what we've seen is that our country is so rife with corruption. And although we've had the Zondo Commission, we've had many commissions already, but with the Madlanga Commission, we are seeing how deep and entrenched and embedded the corruption is. And so I felt, and strongly with my two partners, which is Brendan Greeley and Nico Siakamela, that how can we go and try and build a culture that is more focused on ethical behavior and having a moral compass. And we thought we need to start the training in schools. And that's what we're doing. So with Brendan and Nico, they're going to focus on training in schools on ethics, and they're going to do it in a role play and literally bring in the youth to tell their own challenges and the ethical dilemmas they are faced, and how can we coach them in a way that they stay on the moral pathway and cannot be easily swayed to do the wrong thing. So that's going to be a focus. And then the last focus on whistleblowers is two things there. One is to train them on how to do public speaking so they can either write their own books or tell their own stories and be able to earn from it. Because the challenge is that most whistleblowers are unable to find new jobs, unable to reinvent themselves, and thereby earning through that. So that's one of the skills we want to focus on. And then in partnership with Outer, we want to look at how do we find employment for whistleblowers, because now that is giving them their dignity back. And that's going to be another focus. Thank you.
Cynthia, how can members of the public and the private sector support you?
Thank you. That's an excellent question, Chris, because that's what we want the members of the public to start being involved. You know, that I can imagine the majority of our country watching the Madlanga Commission and feeling totally helpless and seeing the devastation around our country when you're just driving. You see the potholes, you see the state of despair and destruction, no water, no access to electricity, and every infrastructure that existed that was working well is not working well. So here I would like to put forward to our citizens, to members of the public, how to help. Please support organizations that are already working in this space, like OUTA, for instance, like PLOF, like Whistleblower House, Corruption Watch, News 24, all those organizations out there telling us about what's happening in the corruption, and Daily Maverick, obviously. And then for new organizations like ourselves, please contribute on our website if you can. You know, 100 Rand will buy you 2 coffees and a water probably. And, you know, that can easily help towards a whistleblower, to training a whistleblower, giving them skills, helping them heal through telling these stories. And that will help us process that for you. And then for and I'm starting with a minimum of 100 Rand, obviously, but it's a way of just donating and becoming part of the solution rather than being part of the problem. So I'm looking at all our listeners, all our members of the public, look at how you can become part of the solution. So find ways in all this media space, as I said, supporting these organizations, but even in your own environment, go and find out ways, how can we help sort and fix a pothole? How can we help towards, maybe there's a key lamppost that is dangerous for your children to walk under? How can we help maybe put up a solar panel there to keep that light going? But we need to be part of the solution as citizens. And my own mantra is that for if it is to be, it is up to me. So I need to start and take that first step of solving that problem, or linking up with people that we can find the solution to solve a bigger problem. And I think that's how we need to change our thinking and our mindset to help and make a safer South Africa and a better South Africa for all of us.
Cynthia, considering the risks of whistleblowing in South Africa, the risks to lives and livelihood, what would your message be to those people who consider whistleblowing?
That's a key question that sits on many of our minds, Chris. And for me, for those, I would like us all to still do the ethical thing, you know, but not risk your lives and your family's lives and your jobs. And so, therefore, it is imperative that we do report on corruption. It's imperative that we do speak out, but do it in safe mechanisms. So Alta has a safe portal where you can report on. Then you stay back as a good citizen. Don't follow up. Don't talk about it at the coffee station in your organization. Please, you're putting your lives at risk. But do report. Find ways and mechanisms. Report anonymously. Find organizations that can help you, that can protect you, that can give you advice on how to report safely, and also give you advice if you need to go to lawyers or you've already got to a lawyer to give you information. Because remember, once you've spoken out and your name is out there in the media, you are putting yourself at risk, and it's to avoid that. Find those mechanisms, even contact Courage Hub. It's going to be one of our tools we're going to do, and you can come and find us in a physical space. We're at 44 Stanley, Auckland Park. We will give you guidance how to report, who to go to, which mechanisms to use, and then again, don't spread it out to everybody. Keep quiet. You've done your civic duty as a good South African citizen, and then carry on with your job. You don't want to lose your livelihood. You don't want to put your life at risk. And that would be the advice I would like to give, that you do speak up though, but just find the right mechanism, the right tools, and do it safely. Thank you.
Cynthia, meanwhile, what are your thoughts on the Protected Disclosures Bill?
So I'm currently reviewing the Protected Disclosures Bill. First thing is we'd like to change the name. The name should be Protection of Whistleblowers Act rather than the bill. I don't know why they're changing it to bill now, because the original was called the Protected Disclosures Bill. And we'd like to say Protecting Whistleblowers Bill. So that's the name change. Okay, having gone through it, there is some challenges that that's in the bill that doesn't protect whistleblowers who have previously spoken out. So people like myself, like Martha Nangoya, like Ethel Williams, Masila Matepo, Bianca Goodson, none of those will be protected under the new bill. It will only pertain to new bills, new whistleblowers who come forward and tell their story. The second thing is that it's also excluding certain so it says it will pay a reward or reparations or some sort of compensation for whistleblowers if they speak out, and they can recoup some of the funds. And they're excluding people that are working in the public space. And that is strange, because if you look at the both sides, our private organizations together with our public organizations have been involved in fraud, and we've seen that across the spectrum. So now to exclude only the public sector, when we know the very money is our taxpayers' money, which should be used for the very infrastructure that we're seeing that's now in disrepair, those public officials should be recognized in some way. So I find that very unfair that they've raised this. There's a lot to be desired in the way the current bill has been set out. And so, yes, we will be responding as the Courage Hub, and we representing whistleblowers' views. So we've sat with whistleblowers and got their views, which we will then be reflecting on that. And yeah, so there are still, there's quite a few other points, but I'll stop there. Thank you.
Lastly, Cynthia, tell our viewers about that epic walk you did for whistleblowers.
Thank you. Yeah, in 2024, I thought and put a proposal forward to our board of the Whistleblower House at the time, was how can we highlight the plights of whistleblowers, and also a way of shining the light on them, that they are not lost to us, that they did brave things, they took courageous steps. And so it was a way of remembering and uplifting their stories. So in the beginning of October last 2024, I walked for 40 days, over 700 kilometers along the Cape Camino. In our own country, we have a Cape Camino, And on each day, I posted a story about our whistleblowers. Um, the first week, I put it in themes, and the first week, I focused on all the deceased whistleblowers and how they stood up against corruption, how they reported on it, and how they lost their lives. And then the next theme, so each of the 4.5 weeks that I walked, I posted on the legal challenges. So I focused legal, I focused on psychological, I focused on security, and then the financial challenges. So those were my themes. And I remembered over 40 whistleblowers during that time. And while I walked along the Cape Camino, I also picked up a pebble along the way, and I dedicated, at the end of my walk, which we landed up in Langebaan area in the Langebaan Nature Reserve, I wrote the name of each whistleblower on these pebbles, and then I left it there in the reserve. So anyone who is walking the Cape Camino or visits Langebaan, especially around August for the beautiful flowers along the west coast, please do go and find those pebbles and let me know if they're still there. But I dedicated a pebble to each of our whistleblowers, and I dedicated this walk to our whistleblowers for them to know that they walked a journey of hardship, but it was also a journey of courage and a journey of, sheer heroism. And so it was dedicated to them. And thanks for asking about this. Yeah, I have whistleblowers close to my heart, so I will always
I
thank
followed your
you.
journey every
Wonderful.
day. Thank you. That was iconic whistleblower Cynthia Stimple, now the director of Courage Hub SA to help other whistleblowers. Speaking to me, Christine, on the NdB Sunday Show. Thank you, Cynthia. Always an honor to chat with you.
Thank you so much, Chris. Thanks for having me on. Have a wonderful day further.